Hey everyone. Well, since 2004, I've been traveling around North America. I've gone as far out as Florida from California, and then of course up here to British Columbia and Alberta, and sort of that whole southwest and south track. Looking back at all of those trips I took through those years, there are some outstanding experiences I had. As a result, I'm going to present here my top 10 favorite RV destinations. I'm not saying these are the top 10 best destinations to go to. I'm just saying these are the top 10 most memorable destinations that my wife and I could come up with. Number 10, Quartzsite, Arizona. Is it sort of like a Burning Man for retirees? That's putting it too simply, but basically Quartzsite is a town out in the desert in Arizona, between Phoenix and Southern California. It's a town that normally in the heat of the summer, when it's unbearably hot, it has maybe a couple of thousand local residents that live there all the time. But when it comes to being the height of the winter snowbird season, after Christmas, say January through March, it swells up to some ridiculous number. I'll look it up and put it here, but it's like, 100,000 or something like that, I'm going to guess. It's a crazy amount of people at peak. You just look out across the desert landscape and you just see RVs as far as you can see. The town itself is not sophisticated. The tourist stops themselves are few and far between, but it does have this really large gem fair and the largest flea market kind of environment you've ever seen in your life. So if you like going around through old things and finding good deals, you can spend hours just perusing the various flea markets and markets that they have set up there. All open air, or most of it's open air, some of it's indoors. It's quite a trip. I've never actually been there in peak season. I've been there around Christmas time and just before and after New Year's. So it's as it starts ramping up, you can go to some of the flea markets, but I don't know if I could really be there at the peak season. It's kind of like the same reason I don't want to be in New Orleans when it's Mardi Gras. I'll take the other seasons, thank you. It's a funky little dusty place. It's not meant for everyone, but if you're an RVer, especially if you're a full-timer or a long-distance RVer, you owe it to yourself to at least spend one night for free in Quartzsite, Arizona. Number 9 is Sun Resorts in Sarasota, or just outside of Sarasota. This is a real traditional Florida resort, and I'm not saying that this is the best one by any means, but my wife and I normally don't go to these real traditional RV resorts where you wear a wristband and there's 3 different pool areas and water parks and all these souped up golf carts everywhere, all done up with stereo systems and crazy paint jobs. It was quite the scene. We had never been to one of these RV resort scenes. There was ruckus, partying all night, late into the evening, multiple nights and all that, and that was fine with us. It was fun to see so many people having fun. It was a little rednecky, and you know, when you're in the middle of Florida at an RV park, do you expect any less? It was exactly what we wanted, and it was a real blast. So I'm sure there are better RV resorts than that one, and feel free to add them to the comments if you think there are better ones, especially if you're familiar with that part of Florida. But yeah, that was real fun, and mainly just because it was a traditional RV resort with all the amenities, and we avoid those most of the time. We go to either campsites or simple little RV parks. The big resort scene is usually not our scene, but that was fun. Number 8, Malibu, California. The Malibu RV Park. It's right there, perched on the cliff over the Pacific Coast Highway, looking out over the ocean. It's absolutely $1 million views. There's definitely a premium price for sites in general, and if you want one of those sites right on the cliff looking over the water, you're going to pay for it. But it's Malibu, so not only was it a wonderful campsite where you could, barbecue outside and all that, but we could also go and get some really good shishi coffee downtown and go to all the nice places to eat. So it's a real nice mix of RV lifestyle, but you're in the heart of Malibu, which is just, a little extravagant, a little fun, and definitely beautiful. So you have access to all of Los Angeles, of course, mostly the west side. If you're going to Disneyland, this is not the park to stay at. But if you want to go around Los Angeles, the Malibu RV Park is a great place to stop. So number 7 is Banff. Banff is a national park here in Canada. The national park has a town in it, and there are lots of accommodations. We of course stayed in the RV park that was on the one of the very large tracks. I've actually not really seen a national park more RV sites than Banff. It's a very massive complex. It's gorgeous and absolutely as beautiful as, say, Yosemite. It's right there alongside Yosemite for me when it comes to beauty, right there below the Grand Canyon, which to me is the most beautiful place ever to visit. But in the end, Banff is a great place to camp. It's a great place to RV, and then you have access to daily activities anywhere you turn. You can head over to the Icefields Parkway and head towards Jasper. You can go to countless lakes. You can canoe. You can hike. You can ski if you're there in the winter. It's really, really gorgeous there. Admittedly, I went there a little jaded. I thought, oh, I've been to Yosemite and I've been to Grand Canyon. I'm sure this will be nice. And I went there and was absolutely floored by the grandeur of it. All of a sudden, you're in like the Swiss Alps. It feels like it's an entirely different universe. And it is gorgeous everywhere you turn. If you're into the outdoors at all, then you owe yourself one pilgrimage to Banff. Number 6, Lawson's Landing, which is out by Dillon Beach in Sonoma County, California. This is just north of San Francisco. This place has always been a little controversial because it's next to some very sensitive sand dunes, and I believe they're still working it out with the county after like 100 years of being there, or some crazy long period of time. This has been an established location where you can camp, and you can also get some cabins and fish if you're into that. But the really crazy part about this is you can just go to these big wide fields right next to the ocean. It is a private paid camping area, but once you're through the gates, you choose the area you want, and you're there for the weekend. There's lots of parties and groups of people that get set up. And one of the funny things and really interesting things about camping here is, in addition to being right next to the ocean and right next to sand dunes and these big grassy fields that you can just park in, is there's cows. There's just cows wandering around. It's also an active ranch. You'll step out of your rig some morning and there'll just be some cow chilling next to your car eating some grass. And my dogs were a little taken aback by it. It was pretty funny. But yeah, there's just cows everywhere. The cows even walk out into the ocean sometimes and hang out on the beach. It's like nothing you've ever seen. It's a total experience, and it's exquisitely beautiful. The entire Sonoma County region, the Sonoma coast, Marin County coast, you can't go wrong there. It's a little windy, so be prepared. But it is a beautiful location, and I recommend anyone who's heading to that part of California try to get themselves out to Lawson's Landing out in Sonoma County. Number 5, the Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco, California. Did you know that you can camp at the Golden Gate Bridge and sleep overnight in your RV? You have to be very specific how you do it, but it is legal. I personally have sort of an affection for staying at some of these exquisite California coast pullouts and rest areas, and every rest area in California allows you to stay for 8 hours. Even if it says no camping or no overnight camping, you are allowed to stay for 8 hours. This includes all the Vista points up and down the coast in California. So they are also considered rest areas with 8-hour limits, unless it's posted otherwise, like the gates close at some hours. Generally, they're open 24 hours, and you can stay there for 8 hours. The Vista Point next to the Golden Gate Bridge is one of these locations. You can park there for 8 hours. So I made a point when I was coming up through San Francisco. I was coming up late up the 101 from the coast. And so I got into San Francisco fairly late in the evening. And then I headed over to the Golden Gate Bridge. But as I crossed over the bridge into what's now Marin County, there's a Vista Point. I pulled off on the Vista Point. It must have been at that point 11:30 midnight. And I was just going to adhere to the 8-hour rule. Normally rest areas, you've got a little wiggle room if you're staying 10 hours or 11 hours. But in this case, I was going to stick to the book. So I looked at when I got in there, and it was whatever it was I think around midnight. I made sure that I was going to be up and at 'em and have that vehicle moving within 8 hours. Spent the night in the RV, didn't get that knock on the door whatsoever because I was staying within the 8-hour limit. And then I woke up in the morning, took the dogs out for their morning walk. This was all for free, right? I just had to make sure that by 8 a.m. or whatever the 8-hour mark was, that I was moving my RV and getting it out of that parking spot. And that was just not a big deal for me. I was traveling alone with my dogs, so it was just me. And it was really fun just to, for once, stay at the Golden Gate Bridge. I've stayed at a lot of great Vista points up and down the California coast, some of the most beautiful locations overlooking the ocean, all for free, as long as I stick to that 8 or 12-hour sort of window. And of course, as I've mentioned in some of my other videos, it helps if you have a nicer rig and a nicer trailer. If you roll through there in your jalopy and your 20-year-old school bus converted, you're more likely to get that knock on the door than if you've got a nice newer truck and a newer trailer. So I benefit from that little privilege of having a newer set of vehicles, and I never get the knock on the door. But yeah, the Golden Gate Bridge Vista Point was definitely, for me, one of the highlights on my list of places to RV camp. Number 4, the Oregon coast. Now, I'm not saying any specific campsite or town. Really, the almost entire length of the Oregon coast is just a heaven to RV in. There's many, many RV parks. It's really, really hard to boondock in that part of the state. I guess if you know some place that I don't know about, then go for it. But for the most part, I found it very difficult to boondock in that part of the state. It's such a big RV area that they're fairly disciplined about where you can stay. But there's countless RV parks. There's countless campsite and state park style ones, and then there's also like really inexpensive ones that are effectively just some spots behind gas stations in small towns. So you should be able to find something within your price range, but the coast is just gorgeous. You can RV park during the day almost anywhere in any of the parking lots on the Oregon coast. And so often I'll spend a few days out there just going between various nighttime RV sites, and then in the morning I'll pull out and go park next to the ocean for the day, hang out there, go walk on the beach, make some food, maybe take a nice long daytime nap, and then work my way back to another RV park somewhere else on the coast that night. You can just wander around the Oregon coast for days in all its misty beauty. If I have one piece of advice about going down the Oregon coast, though, is go down the coast, don't go up the coast. Why do I say you go south down the coast? Because as you drive down, you're going to want to pull out at a million beautiful pullouts, whether it's parks or just viewpoints. And if you're going north, every one of those you're going to have to hang a U-turn and pull back into, and then hang a U-turn again to head north. But if you're heading south, you can just pull off, check some stuff out, and get back on the road and keep going south. It's an entirely different experience going south on the Oregon coast versus going north on the Oregon coast, especially if you have a big rig or you're towing a large trailer. Number 3 is Moab, Utah. Moab, Utah is in the heart of the desert, in the heart of all kinds of recreational outdoor areas, whether it's Arches National Park, whether it's the Canyonlands National Park, or all the other national monuments and state lands that are around there. Whether you like to mountain bike, whether you like to go 4-bying, whether you like to hike, really Moab has something for you, and you could spend weeks there and never see the same thing twice. It's absolutely ground zero for weeks and weeks of outdoor activity. So I suggest strongly that if you're out and about and thinking about where to go, that at least once you go to Moab. It is getting a little busier there than when I went 15 years ago. So some of the parks like Arches require you have to get a pass for the day. Some of the hikes, I think up to Fragile Arch, which was one of the hikes we did up to the, it's quite a hike for an amateur, but not a bad one for an experienced hiker. I think these days, though, you need to have a pass or a day pass. So look it up if you're going there. Make sure you plan your day right. You can also rent Jeeps. So if you don't have a 4x4, you can go there and one day just rent a Jeep and head on out. And you can also rent satellite phones in case you get yourself in a jam. Moab, Utah. You won't go wrong visiting there. Number 2. Not too far from Moab is Monument Valley, Utah. It straddles the Utah-Arizona border. You would certainly recognize it from movies, whether the scene in Forrest Gump where he decided to stop running and just started walking back home after that big, long nationwide run. That scene was shot in one of the most traditional places to shoot from Monument Valley, looking down the road at all of the plateaus that are down in the valley. And then, of course, if you go into Monument Valley, you realize this is what they're mimicking in all of the Roadrunner and Wile E. Coyote cartoons. Those pop culture references might make you remember what Monument Valley looks like. But more importantly, it's part of Navajo reservation land. It's considered a highly spiritual place from the Navajo. And I myself am not the most spiritual person for sure, but I got to say, going to Monument Valley had an effect on me. It was quite an impressive, intense place to go. There's no place like that in the United States that looks like Monument Valley directly. And it's just a real trip. The campsite itself is over not too far from the actual location. Again, it's on Navajo land. It's actually at a historic trading post that goes way back in history. And the RV sites are nothing special. They're just classic desert RV sites. But one thing I wasn't aware of or prepared for was the amount of wild feral dogs in the area. The dogs were quite harmless, meaning we didn't see any aggressive dogs. These dogs know how to get free food, right? They act all nice. And as I was unhooking my RV, this dog came up to me and I started petting it. And I said to the guy next to me, "Hey, is this your dog?" And he's like, "Nope." He goes, "That's one of the wild ones." And I realized there were wild dogs all over the place. It was a little intimidating when we took our dogs out to go to the bathroom. I won't lie, but we made sure not to feed them. And we did watch the foreign tourists in the Cruise America RV rental decide to feed the dogs from their RV, and they had a pack of maybe 15 dogs all hanging around their RV for the night looking for their next treat. So if you are somewhere in the desert with a lot of feral dogs, don't feed the dogs. I've mentioned before that Monument Valley, which was on my bucket list, is back on my bucket list to go a second time. So yes, I'll be going back to Monument Valley at some point. I hope to put a video on this channel about it. And finally, the number one favorite RV location for me and my wife was Disney World's Fort Wilderness RV Park, which is on the grounds of Disney World. This resort goes all the way back to the beginning to 1971. It's been in effect for a very long time, so it's very grown in and very well built. We went there for my wife's birthday, and it was also close to our dog's birthday, so they both got birthday pins as we drove in and went through the entryway. You can rent golf carts there. So as we pulled into the entrance, we pulled over, my wife got a golf cart, and then we drove down a little caravan down to our RV spot. It was not too far from all the activities, but it was really nice to just have a golf cart. We've never rented one at one of these RV resorts before. So the idea is we were on the property, and we could take our golf cart right over to a little golf cart parking area next to the ferry, hop on the ferry, which was a very small ferry just for our campground. So it was a nice little intimate ride through the waterways of Disney World over to the Magic Kingdom or over to Epcot, wherever we wanted to go. It was just a really cool experience. It's the only time we've ever taken our dogs to a dog park at Disney World, because of course they had a dog park at the RV park. And it was just a real treat to be staying on the Disney property in our RV. It was sort of everything that I love and that my wife especially loves, Disney, all coming together in one location at one time. So the park is exquisite, it's really well done. It's had no complaints about any aspect of it. It's very well maintained. I mean, it's Disney. If you have the chance and you're in Florida and you can go to Fort Wilderness, my wife and I give it our strongest endorsements. Bring your dogs, bring your kids. And that's it. Those are our top 10. I hope maybe you choose one or two of those out of the list and try them out. I'd love to hear your comments if you've been to some of them. Some of those ones I imagine some people may absolutely dislike, such like Quartzsite, right? It's a little dusty and dirty, so if you like the she resorts, stay out of Quartzsite. But really, I'd like to hear your feedback on what your favorite RV spot was. So comment below on what's your number one or top 3 RV locations, and let's see what kind of list we can build here. Thanks, everyone.